Good morning, students. So this is our lesson video for Tuesday, March 31st. So before I begin our lesson, I want to go over how to find all of our assignments and materials for our online learning. Based on the reflection responses that I received yesterday, I saw a lot of students had written that they are having trouble keeping up because they don't know where to find all of their assignments. So just a way to quickly show you how to do this. Every day I post something in our recent activity updates. I give you the directions for the day. So for today it says good morning. Please follow the directions for today, March 31st lesson. And all you need to do is do these three things step by step. Open the online learning week 3 slides. So you're going to click this and open it. And then you're going to watch today's lesson video. And then you're going to respond to the prompt on the discussion board. So if you don't know where to start, you can always start by going to the recent activity and follow my directions. Now, some of us prefer going to our class page. So for example, here is our class page, and you always want to click on materials. Now on the side over here has all of the assignments that are due for our class. So if you look here, it has the dates March 16, March 17, March 18, 19, March 20, March 23, 25, IXL problems, and then the final quiz, which was due on Sunday, March 29. So if you are behind on your work, always know that if you look at the upcoming calendar section, it has all of our assignments listed. Now, where else can you look? Well, based on the week that you are in, if you click on these folders, it also has all of our materials. So for example, this week is online learning week 3. So I'm going to click this folder, and now I have a link to the week 3 slides. I have the homework that was due March 30th, and then this is the homework that's due today. So again, if you don't know where to go, you click on the folder that corresponds to the week that we're on. So say that you're trying to catch up on the first week of online learning, that you're going to click this red folder and you're going to complete all of these assignments, each one by clicking on them. All right, so again, now that we're in week 3, we're on the yellow folder, online learning week 3. If I click it, now I can see the slides for this week. I can see my homework that was due March 30th, and I can see my homework that is due today, March 31st. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and click on the week 3 slides, and here are my slides. Now I'm going to press present. And it says announcements. Misuse office hours through video conference for period 1, 2, and 6 will be this Thursday from 2 to 4. And for my period 4 and 5, it'll be this Thursday from 11 to 1. So if you can join us using your phone or a computer, we'll be doing a video conference and I can see your faces and we can answer any questions you have. If you need a laptop, a Chromebook to do your online work, you can click on this link to sign up to come to Yoga on April 1st or April 2nd to pick up a laptop. So that's our announcements for this week. Now, next slide. It says only students who have 0 incomplete assignments should move on to Tuesday's slides. If you have incomplete assignments, you need to click on the proper link below to make up your work ASAP. So say that you have missing assignments from March 16th to March 20th. Then you're going to click on this link and it's going to open up week 1 slides. If you are missing work from March 23rd to March 27, you're going to click here and it's going to take you to all of your assignments. Now, if you are ready to move on to Tuesday's lesson, to today's lesson, because you've been on task, then you would click on this and it takes us straight to our Tuesday Do Now. So our Do Now for Tuesday, the topic is thermal energy. Our learning objective, I will learn about how the transfer of thermal energy affects the state of matter that a substance is in. I will reflect on my learning by responding to a question on the discussion board. And here's our to-do list. I changed the class agenda to a to-do list. So your to-do list today is number 1, watch the final quiz review video. Number 2, watch this States of Matter lesson video. And number 3, homework, respond to the discussion board on Schoology. Alright, so moving on. I'm not gonna play this video right now.
So in this
You can
last
watch this
page
on
and you
your
click
own. You can watch this video on your own. This video goes over all of the correct answers for the final quiz. So if you didn't take it yet, you can watch this and get some hints. If you already took the quiz but you didn't score that high, you can watch this video and see what you got wrong, because I'm going to ask the same questions on our unit test. All right, moving on, number 2. All right, so this is the part of the video that you have to listen very, very carefully to everything that I say, because on Thursday, you'll have a quiz on what I go over in these notes. So these are the states of matter notes, and those of you who would like to write these down on a piece of paper, I encourage you to do that, because you can use your notes that you take on the quiz that we take on Thursday, and it'll be a good way to study. All right, so the first part says, what is matter? Matter is any substance that has mass and takes up space. So mass means weight. So for example, your notebook, your computer, yourself, your pencil, your table, your phone, all of these materials they have mass and they take up space, which means that they are matter. And all physical objects like what I named are made up of matter in the form of small particles called atoms. So like your notebook, your pencil, your pen, your phone, your computer, all of those things are made up of matter, or we might know them better as small particles like we've learned. Now, reviewing what we learned about kinetic energy is the energy of motion. It describes how fast or slow the particles are moving. So remember, all things are made up of particles or matter, and these particles are always moving around. Sometimes if the particles are moving quickly, that means they have a high kinetic energy. And if particles are moving slowly, that means they have a low kinetic energy. Now we have to learn the 3 states of matter. So all of the physical objects that we know or we talked about, they might be able to exist in 3 states of matter. So for example, if we talk about water, water can exist in 3 states of matter. It can be solid in the ice form, it can be liquid, just like liquid running water, or water molecules can also be in a gas state. So the 3 states of matter are solid, liquid, and gas. And all of these round circles, these yellow round circles, are supposed to represent the particles. So we're going to talk about each state of matter in detail. So first we'll talk about a solid. So what are the properties of a solid? Particles are packed very, very tightly together in a solid. So if you can notice, all of these particles, they're packed nicely and tightly together. They're all right next to each other, and they're all packed tightly together. So imagine like an ice cube. These particles, if they're in a solid form, it's going to be very rigid, and it's going to take on a specific shape. And these particles will vibrate side to side in place. So even though these particles are packed tightly together, they can still move side to side. They can still vibrate side to side. Even though they can't freely move around and slide past each other, they can still vibrate side to side. So that means that these particles in the solid state will have a low kinetic energy. But something very important to remember is that everything has thermal energy, even a solid, even ice cubes. And this is because all things are made of matter, known as particles, and these particles are always going to be moving around, no matter what state of matter they are in. So even in a solid, the particles are vibrating side to side, so these particles will have thermal energy. Even in an ice cube, the water molecules will be moving side to side just a little bit, so even an ice cube will have some thermal energy. The next state of matter is a liquid, and in a liquid, as you can notice, the particles are still close together, but they're able to move around more freely, and they can actually start to slide past one another. So they're not far apart and separated, but they can still slide past one another. which means that these particles will have more kinetic energy than in the solid state because they have the more ability to move around quickly. Now the last state is a gas. Particles in a gas are spread very, very far apart. So notice each particle is spread far apart. And these particles can move freely and very quickly because they're more separated, so they can move around more freely. And these particles have very high kinetic energy. Out of all three states, the particles in a gas will have the most kinetic energy. All right, now this is another important part, so I want you to listen up. It says, how does matter change from one state to another? So how can something go from a solid to a liquid and then to a gas? Or how can something go from a gas to a liquid and then to a solid? Well, matter changes from one state to another when thermal energy, we learned this word, when thermal energy is added or when thermal energy is removed. So by adding or removing thermal energy, the kinetic energy of the particles changes, and that causes the temperature to change. So we'll learn this in more detail on the next slide. So again, how does matter change from one state to another? Well, how can we go from a solid to a liquid? When you add thermal energy to a solid, so for example, when you heat up the ice cube, when you add thermal energy to a solid, it's going to go from a solid to a liquid. And why does that happen? Remember, when you add thermal energy, the kinetic energy will increase. The particles will start to move faster. And as they start to move faster, the temperature will also go up because temperature measures average kinetic energy. So as these particles begin to move faster due to the thermal energy that was added, they're going to start to loosen up and they'll start to change into the liquid state. Now, how can we go from a liquid to a gas state? Well, just like solid to liquid, we have to keep adding more thermal energy. So if you keep adding more thermal energy, for example, when you boil water and you add a bunch of heat to the water that's boiling, soon enough it's going to become a gas state because again, the particles' kinetic energy will increase. They're going to start to move faster and faster because so much thermal energy got added, and this will cause their temperature to go up, and then it will change into a gas state. Now, how about going the other way? How can we go from a gas to a liquid? Well, it has to be the opposite of adding thermal energy. If you want it to go from a gas to a liquid, then these particles need to slow down. You want to make these particles move less and less so that they can start to get close together again. Well, how can you make them move less? Well, you need to you have to remove thermal energy. So when you remove thermal energy, these particles will start to slow down and their kinetic energy will decrease. And when their kinetic energy decreases, that means that their temperature will also go down. And that's how you go from a gas to a liquid. You make these particles slow down, you make the temperature go down by removing thermal energy. Now, how can we go from a liquid to a solid? Again, same thing, we have to remove thermal energy. So imagine putting liquid water into the freezer. When you put liquid water into the freezer, you're going to be removing thermal energy from the liquid water. Thermal energy will be removed, it will be taken away, which means that these particles are going to start to move less and less and less. Their kinetic energy will decrease, the temperature will drop, it will go down, and soon enough, all of the particles will start to get very, very tightly packed together, and they're going to start to only vibrate side to side instead of sliding past one another. So that's how you go from solid to liquid. All right, now next part is gonna be on your quiz on Thursday, so make sure you're still listening up to this point. What are these phase changes called? So when you go from a solid to a liquid, what do we call that? Well, you might know when you have an ice cube that becomes liquid water, you call it melting. So when the state of matter changes from solid to a liquid, we call that melting. Now, how about when water goes, or when the state of matter changes from a liquid to a gas? Well, some of us might have learned the word evaporation. So, evaporation is when the state of matter changes from a liquid to a gas. So, for example, you might say, oh, the water evaporated. It changed from liquid to gas. Now, how about the other way? What do we call the phase change when the state of matter goes from gas to a liquid? We call that condensation. We're going to learn this word in the water cycle unit later on, but condensation is what you call this phase change from gas to a liquid. So when the particles in a gas state switch to a liquid state, it's going to be called condensation. And lastly, what do we call the phase change when it goes from a liquid to a solid? We call that, well, imagine putting liquid water in the freezer to become ice. We call it freezing. So when it goes from a liquid to a solid, we call that freezing. All right, so please know these 4 words: melting, evaporation, condensation, and freezing. You're going to have a quiz on all of this on Thursday, so make sure that you review this video. If you want to go back and hear me explain everything again, please do so, because you'll have a final quiz on Thursday on the states of matter. All right, so that's it for this lesson video. Thank you for listening. Alright, so if the video was not clear, the notes are still here. You just keep pressing next and all of the notes will be up here for you to use for your benefit. And one thing that I do want to make sure that you understand, because it's going to be on your IXL practice problems, when you go from a solid to a liquid, the kinetic energy of the particles will change. However, the number of particles will not change. How many particles are in the solid? They're going to stay the same in the liquid. So the amount of particles does not change. The type of particles does not change. It's just that the kinetic energy of the particles will change. So keep that in mind. Again, you can keep going through your notes at your own pace if you need. Now I'm just going to quickly launch this simulation to show you melting and boiling. So you can press launch. And when the thermal energy is being added, the solid ice is melting into water. Notice the particles are still the same. They're just moving faster. Particles do not disappear. They are still there. Now, as more thermal energy is added, the particles start to move faster and faster. Their kinetic energy increases and they're going to start to spread out. And since the beaker is open, as the particles gain thermal energy and start to spread out more, some of these particles are going to escape into the atmosphere. Now please realize the particles didn't disappear. They just escaped into the atmosphere since the container was open. All right, going back to our slides, we're almost done. Okay, so now the last part is that you need to go onto Schoology and complete your homework for today. So it says log into Schoology, click on the chat bubble, States of Matter lesson reflection due March 31st, it's due today, and respond to this prompt by typing your answer. So again, when you go to Schoology, you can find the discussion chat picture either on the side over here, or you can go into the yellow folder and click on this, and the directions say, number 1, watch States of Matter lesson video. That's the video that you just saw, and respond to this reflection prompt. Describe what you learned from today's video. So you're gonna type your response. I learned from the video that, and then please type your response and post it to me, and I will read what you wrote and give you a grade. Alright, so that's it for today's video. Thank you for watching. Please now go and complete this discussion board. Thank you.